Hello and welcome to the final day and the final leg of the Rise PECO World Summit, the 12th edition of a unique convening of thought leaders, practitioners, learners, and the spectrum in between. What is uncommon about them is the spirit to collaborate for the greater good. And what is common about them are the Rise values: responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and ecosystem friendly, as you saw in the video just now. The summit got off to a resounding start, and over this week has seen 100+ sessions co-created and co-located in multiple cities with almost the same number of partners and over 200 experts from around the globe for a community that is now 9,000 strong from 83 countries. We hope you will continue to stay with us and join us in the final closing plenary and the Rise Awards that will be presented. Also, the portal will be open to everyone to see the videos that will be provided on demand for you to catch up with anything that you might have missed right through this week. And of course, also welcome you to this wonderful roundtable on this day of D&I in awareness in action, transforming unconscious bias into conscious change. Of course, being presented by an expert who has been with us for the past number of years and who every year has really made a big difference with the roundtable and the experts that she brings to her roundtables. Maya is a LinkedIn top voice, a renowned global keynote speaker, coach, and corporate trainer with over 2 decades of experience. She was recently awarded the Global Women Leader 2024 by World Women Congress and CMO Asia. Maya is also recognized as 100 Emerging Women Leaders by Your Story. Maya has been continuously been recognized for her contributions to D&I, and today she brings all that wealth of experience to this roundtable, awareness in action, transforming unconscious bias into conscious change. Maya, may we please have you on stage?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karen, and for providing this beautiful opportunity to collaborate with you once again. It's always been a delight and a pleasure to be associated with the Rise World Summit. And today we are going to be talking and delving into a topic that is deeply personal and something that I'm extremely passionate about. And we have seen over the past number of years the conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion, as we call it, DEIE, has only grown louder and more frequent. While it's encouraging to see the increased awareness, and a disturbing trend has also emerged in many organizations where they are prioritizing DEIE much as a public relationships exercise or a PR activity and as a mere tokenism. True inclusivity requires more than just checking boxes and making superficial changes. Personally driven by a deep desire to understand the true state of DNIE, I've immersed myself in this topic, starting from attending numerous events, engaging in countless conversations with industry leaders, HR professionals, and thought leaders. It's become clear that while the rhetoric is strong, the reality is often far more complex. And there's a famous quote, and as somebody that loves dancing, I would like to take this quote and share with you, which says, "Diversity is being invited to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance, and belongingness is dancing like no one's watching." Isn't it? Now, without much ado, let me just quickly introduce my esteemed panel for today. First, we have Amith Prakash, who's the Vice President of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, APAC, Randstad Enterprise. Amith is a seasoned professional with 2 decades of experience. Amith is responsible for championing EDI, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion for employees across APAC at Randstad Enterprise and strategic clients in the region. As an EDI strategist, Amith works towards positioning diversity as a differentiator and inclusion as the integrator, with a focus on talent attraction, retention, and growth. Thank you, Amith, for taking the time today. Next up, we have Anjan. Anjan A is a Vice President, HR Talent Management and Development, Northern Trust. Anjan has been with Northern Trust for over 15 years and currently is a vice president of the HR Talent Management and Development team. Anjan comes in with a passion for facilitation and learning and has been actively leading the learning initiatives for Northern Trust India. He believes the capability to learn is a gift, and the ability to learn is a skill, and the willingness to learn is a choice. Thank you, Anjan. Next up, we have Harini. Harini Krishnan is a global lead DEIE and culture at 24/7 AI. With over a decade and a half in the human resources domain across hiring, learning and development, sales and training, Harini is an IIM alumna, computer science engineer, certified leadership, hiring ninja, and a mentor. She is an active ally to the LGBTQIA plus community, women empowerment, and CSR advocate. She is a voracious reader, nature lover, and an inclusion catalyst. She is currently enabling the Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Charter and Culture at 24/7 AI. Welcome, Harini. Next up, we have Priyanka. Priyanka Mishra is Global Talent Delivery Process Expert, Hitachi Energy. Priyanka is an experienced HR professional with 15 years of experience. Her expertise in talent, DEIE, change management, HR transformation, and strategic HR business partnering and continuous improvement. She is passionate about her job and the function of human resources. However, before being successful at the work, she believes that it is important to be a human being, to be a better human being, to be passionately able to impact the lives of others that she engages with on a regular daily basis for a better tomorrow. She's somebody who's self driven and passionate about learning something new every day to be able to return to society. Thank you, Priyanka, for joining us today. And next up, we have Bhumika. Bhumika Srivastava, Head of HR, ex Walmart. Bhumika Srivastava is an accomplished HR leader with extensive experience leading HR in startups and global enterprises, including Walmart Global Tech, Airbnb, Snapdeal, Adobe, Tesco, and many others. She has driven workforce strategy, innovation, and growth across diverse teams and geographies. Recognized for her leadership, she has earned accolades like Young HR Leader by TAPI and Economic Times, and influential HR leader by the World HRD Network. Thank you, Bhumika, for taking your time today. And with that, we have welcomed our esteemed panel, and let's just quickly jump into our first question and really set up the stage for understanding what does DEIE or diversity, equity, inclusion mean. My first question is coming up to you, Amith. Over the past few years, DEIE has gained significant momentum in the world over. In your view, what has been the most notable shift in how organizations approach DEIE today?
Look at how diversity and inclusion has evolved is that it has gone beyond being a tokenistic idea. And I think a lot of organizations are mindful about this fact that they do not want to do diversity and inclusion just because of the sake of doing it. Because they know that today employees are smart, all right, they are very well informed, and they can ask a lot of questions. In fact, if you look at the new generations at work, the millennials, the Gen A's, the Gen Alpha, and now of course we also have the Gen Beta, they have a very strong and a questioning mindset. So I think corporates have to be very mindful of the fact that if you're doing diversity and inclusion, you got to be mindful of the fact that you're doing it for a particular reason. All right. Apart from that, the other part is that there are very specific action-oriented strategies. There is a lot of accountability which is now set in when it comes to diversity and inclusion. There are also a lot of data-driven metrics. So when you talk about D&I, all right, we always look at what are the diversity demographics within the organization, even before we make a start, all right? And that becomes very important. And last but not the least, and this is an important thought I will leave you with, is that a lot of organizations are looking at how do we move up the diversity value chain. Now, what is the value chain over here now? Let's assume that you're working for a multinational organization, and a lot of concepts around diversity and inclusion in the organization comes from the headquarters. So in many cases, what happens, the headquarters, wherever the company is located, is very matured in its D&I practices. But the regional offices across the world may not be having the same level of maturity. They could be at different levels. Some could be at par, some could be ahead, some could be falling behind. So organizations today are very, very keen to ensure that they move up the diversity value chain. All right. They are adding value in every step of the process, whether it is hiring, whether it is pay equity, or whether it is creating a sense of belongingness. So there's a lot of, things happening in the world of D&I. Recently, there have been some announcements which have been made, where there's also a pushback on diversity and inclusion in certain parts of the government, that we have been hearing. But I think this is something that we're also closely watching, because we're also seeing what are the kind of impacts that this could have. But like I said, it's something that is very important. We cannot ignore it completely, and I think we should be very mindful as to what kind of strategies we are building for ourselves.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Amith, for that really elaborative, response. And really, I love the fact that you mentioned that diversity is not revolutionary, but it's evolutionary. That's a really interesting point that you brought about. Okay, I'm hearing a little feedback from somebody. Can we have the audience on mute, please?
Amit, no, nobody's this thing. It's yeah, sorry. Thanks, Amit. Yeah. Go ahead, Maya.
Okay. All right. Was I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. There was just a little bit of echo coming through Amit's
Sure.
this thing for yeah.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
got it. All right, okay, super. So yeah, I also, here you mentioned the fact about the global pushback, and my next question is actually around that, and this is coming to you, Harini. Despite the growing conversations around DEIE, we are seeing that there's been a global pushback from, slashing budgets to questioning its effectiveness. How do we really see this impacting the entire DNIE landscape, and especially in India? And what should organizations do to ensure that it actually still remains a business priority and not just a compliance checkbox?
Sure. Thanks for the question, Maya. I think, like Amit said, we're all watching this space to see what are the changes that it can bring, and we're really on top of it. While in a personal opinion, I feel that things can change after 5 years, then will we go back to starting from scratch? But having said that, India is a very different space. I feel it's a unique country, and if we have to look back anywhere between 5 and 10 years, it's great to see the kind of mileage and the progress that we've made in D&I in this workspace in India Inc., right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are not particularly following the West or any other region. Of course, there could be some kind of influence, but organizations in India Inc. are very clear about what is the practical way to drive DEI in their own spaces. And in my mind, I would think the way to escape tokenism would be for organizations to clearly pick up those agendas or charter that resonate with the overall value and mission of the company, right? So if we are able to tie to what is your organizational goal, and those 1, 2, or 3 elements that diversity can help in getting to that goal is something that we will have to drive as strategy, as agenda. I think that is the only way we can escape just checking the boxes. And also, I feel that there should be certain commitment that leadership in organizations must take towards that particular agenda or strategy that we have in place. So to summarize this, one is for organizations to identify what is your key driver in terms of the D&I space, identifying 1 or 2 agenda that you can drive that rolls back to your organization vision, mission, and values and targets, and then ensuring that there is leadership commitment across levels, not only top down, but also bottom up to be able to drive this. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Harini. Now that we have, sort of looked at DEIE at a global understanding, and also from the lens of what's happening at India Inc., let's just quickly move on to and looking at and understanding more of unconscious bias and really identifying them. So my question comes to you, Priyanka, around unconscious bias. And unconscious bias, as we often know, is described as an invisible force that shapes workplace culture. How do you define it in simple terms, and why should organizations actively work to identify and address it?
Yes, so thank you first for this very thoughtful question. Okay. And I'll begin with the question about unconscious bias being an invisible force. Now let's understand why it is a force, because it is our mind which is automatically adjusting us towards this kind of a bias piece, and it is outside of our own awareness. So what happens is this force starts shaping our perception, our daily interactions, our decisions which we take without us realizing it. Now, if we track back everybody, I mean, if we reflect, if we track back, where does it come from? So it is deeply rooted into our childhood because of the conditioning, because of our very powerful influence of our culture. Now, over a period of time, gradually, these biases, or whatever you call it, thoughts, prejudices, biases, whatever, it interferes in our decision-making process, the way we act, the way we interact, and later it becomes our part. So it becomes your own habit. So this is how I become as a person. And that is when the differences start. That is when we start treating people differently. We have our own opinion about things, which is other than the fact. Now, it is important, it is very essential for organizations to react onto this and understand this and address it at an early piece. Because if certain things like this is left unaddressed, then we are creating a work culture, or we are creating a workplace where people are not treated equally, where the diversity score is limited, where you're creating a workplace where it is discouraged to collaborate, it is discouraged to bring innovation, and when everybody feels unsafe. So I think today, the first thing which any organization does is working a lot on the awareness piece, okay? And where we have, I mean, I can also say that we also have this in our own organization, plus various organizations where these are now mandatory set of training, that unconscious bias is a mandatory set of training, where it brings in like at a different level, what does it play as an impact in your own role? Like for an individual contributor, understanding these biases, if you do not recognize them, if you do not understand them early, what is the missing opportunity do you have? You miss out on the opportunity of developing a growth mindset, of interacting and learning from others. And that is when you are not developing yourself. And that's when you are, because all these happens because of your own prejudices, on biases. Similarly, at a leadership level or a people manager level, it is because of them looking at their own, what is my feeling about this thing, rather than looking at the data points. It impacts the decision making. Now, this decision making could be the hiring process, it could be performance evaluation, performance management, or later it could also be where you are getting into things where you start losing onto clients, start losing onto business opportunity, which could be a bigger hinder or bigger loss to the organization. Now, that's where I think if you actually see these whole biases piece, or the learning onto biases piece, understanding and recognizing, it is now being put into every people-centric or people-related decisions, all important decisions. So be it hiring piece, be it a performance management or a learning thing, or everything, it is coming into that. Why so? To make it more objective, to make it more scientific, that yes, we are looking at the individual from their talent point of view. What is the knowledge which they bring in? Valuing their knowledge, valuing their respect, respecting the competencies which they're showing, the skills which they are bringing. What is the behavior which they're demonstrating in meeting their performance? So it is to be basing from this kind of a data set, rather than feeling, what is the feeling which I had about a person, or the subsequent kind of observations which you have made. Now, this is where I think organizations are investing, and there's regular trainings, I would say, for managers, for HR folks, for everybody to understand and realize these things. And this is where the leaders also play a very important role, because as a leader, if you also show your vulnerability, that I am not ready for it, I do not understand everything, I do not know everything, that's when you also challenge yourself to accept the change, accept what is around you, and maybe be open for the feedback which is coming from your own people, letting them have the voice to tell where is the need of improvement, what should we do about this. And that is when we are working together to build an inclusive culture where people feel that, yes, there is an equal level playing from everybody, where there's equal opportunity, where people feel respected, belonged. And that's something which we all have to work when we look at things from a more objective point of view. And I would say that in today's thing, I mean, things are more easier. We have the technology, we have AI, we have companies which are very data driven. So you have a lot of data, which helps you to make your decision based on data, not by your own judgments. You have to present your facts. You need to know what is behind the scenes. And that is what you have to talk about. You need to get into the details. You cannot be at the surface level. That's not how things work. And maybe to sum it up, I will say that these things require a continuous effort from everybody. It's not just only leader understanding what is an implicit bias. It's not only the manager understanding, it's everybody in the organization understanding, acknowledging them, and then working together for their own betterment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Priyanka, for really summing it up, so succinctly, understanding, acknowledging, and therefore actioning. I think that's the way, to go about really becoming more aware of our own unconscious bias. And like you said, today it's become mandatory for many organizations. While it's being made as a mandatory training, I think I'm also curious to know, and my next question comes to Anjan, the fact that we all understand that unconscious bias is also often described as the silent disruptor in workplaces. So, in your experience, what are some of the common types of unconscious bias that would have probably shown up in your work experience or organizations that you have worked for, and how do they actually impact decision making?
Thanks, Maya. I mean, that's a very, very intriguing question, and there's a lot from the experience that I can share. If I look back, some of the common unconscious biases include affinity bias. You all have gone through it, or we all have seen it, right? So favoring, and just for everybody's perspective, favoring those with similar backgrounds, or and you could also have something called as a confirmation bias,
Yes.
seeking information that aligns with preconceived notions. And
Yeah.
Sometimes consciously, unconsciously, some of us also in the past might have slipped into it, right? These biases can have a lot of influence on our hiring, promotions, project assignments. Often the outcome of this is that it limits diverse talents and fresh perspectives.
Absolutely.
Now,
Yes.
when I sit and think about it, and my 2 cents to be is to counteract them, organizations can implement structured decision-making processes. I'm sure a lot of organizations have done this already, and it's not alien to many. Blind CV reviews, I think it's already in practice. It started across, but that could be something that you could do. Have diverse hiring panels, ensuring fairness and inclusivity in every stage of talent management could be a way where we could tackle and have it not impact in the decision making as such. But this is something that I could think of from my experience. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's great that you brought about the fact that, affinity bias, and there is this confirmation bias and likability bias. And I see there's a question, from the audience here around affinity bias. And maybe, Anjan, if you would like to take that question, or it's open to any of the other panelists who would probably like to address this. The question is, how do we really handle some of these affinity bias at workplace, whether it is like, forming groups which are based on common interests, say food, music, cricket, or travel, or whatever it may be. So what are some of the strategies, probably that organizations could effectively put in place that, again, like you mentioned, to look at data when it comes to decision making and really look at things objectively rather than subjectively, right?
I can give it a go. I think there's no one answer to this. It's all about the approach and the space that we create for employees to feel comfortable. Right. Now, we can't take away the originality that each one of us had. I'll just give you a very simple example of this panel today. Right. We all told you something outside of our LinkedIn, but it just clicked of a sudden. There was a lot of similarities that we saw. But had there not been, it's still okay because everybody respects each other's space, and we all are okay to do what we love to do as individuals. And I think as organizations, the whole idea is to create a space, bring in the engagement, and allow people to share what they wish to share, as long as they feel heard, as long as they're able to connect. Now, when you have 40 people, I'm sure you might have 5-6 people who connect to what you do. So there could be chances where you connect to people and you learn from the others as well. And I've also seen, in my experience, the people who possibly not liked something, after they've been put in a group and they interact with people, they kind of shied to the other way, and they start picking new things up. So that could be some way that we can look at it.
Yes.
I see Amith's raised his hand.
Yeah, I think Amith also probably wants to take a dig at that answer. Please go ahead, Amith.
I think this is such an important topic that, it's always important to build on what my co-panelist Anjan has said. And I think when you look at diversity and inclusion, I think the entire talent function plays a very, very important role. In fact, folks in the talent acquisition arena are also called as the gatekeepers of the culture and inclusion in the organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
important to look at how are you welcoming that talent into the organization. Now, what's important over here is when you talk about biases, one of the good ways of probably addressing this concept of affinity bias is to look at blind hiring. You out the non-essential details, all right, and you
Absolutely.
shields, which are important for you to
Yes.
decide, is that person having the skill which is relevant to the job? Because today, and I'm sure a lot of my co-panelists and people in the room will agree that organizations are very focused on skill-based hiring.
Hmm.
They always look at what kind of skills are you bringing to the table.
Hmm.
Second is, if you look at the workforce, all right, I say that our workforce is like a polymath. When I say polymath, a polymath is an individual who comes with multiple skills.
Yeah.
Right. So today, the world of work also demands that you come in with multiple skills. All right. Work itself is evolving so much. Recently in Davos, the World Economic Forum just concluded over there, and the theme was artificial intelligence. And there's also a corollary which is being drawn up in terms of looking at how do we leverage equity, how do we leverage artificial intelligence to make our organizations more equitable? All right. What are the things that we should be looking at in terms of making the hiring practices more fair and equitable? In fact, at Randstad, because we are into hiring and that's the core of what we do. We are very mindful to tell all our candidates that if you're applying for a job, all right, be it at Randstad or any of the clients that we work with, every candidate in the market out there should have an equitable opportunity to apply to all the open positions. All right, there should be no discrimination at any point in time that anybody should undergo. All right, and that's where Anjan rightly said the concept about training, building that awareness becomes very important. I conclude, I'll just leave you with one thought. If biases are not addressed early enough, right? Now, keep in mind, as long as we are humans, we are going to have biases. Being aware about biases is a starting point, which is a good way of understanding how, these biases come into the picture. If biases are not addressed early enough, they can become habit forming. All right. There's enough research to show that if these habits are ingrained in an individual, that's how the unconscious part of the bias comes out in the open. So I think we should be very mindful that whatever is your bias, be aware about it. Don't let it become a habit. Once it becomes a habit, it's going to take you a longer amount of time to undo the entire,
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Very, 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 aptly put, Amit here, because very aptly put here, Amit, because, as they say, it's easier to learn when you are a child, and so much of unlearning you have to do when you become an adult. And I think the lesser number of years we, or rather, let's say, the more mature we become in our way of living life a certain way and thinking a certain way and behaving a certain way, the more difficult it becomes to unlearn some of our patterned behavior. And as just alluding to what Priyanka just mentioned in terms of describing or defining what unconscious bias is, these are much of our conditioned habitual ways of thinking, being, and behaving, right? So really undoing and unlearning some of these become extremely hard, because many times it's actually hardwired. It's really hardwired in our systems, and unless we make a conscious effort, it is going to remain an unconscious bias. I think that that's what kind of in many ways sums up our our thought and our discussion here. And I see some interesting questions coming up from the audience here, so I'm going to move on to the next question, and this is open to any of the panelists that may want to take it up. And so the question is, I see this. The question is, I've always heard that we have Equal Remuneration Act under labor laws, which means there is equal pay for equal work, irrespective of gender. But in India, this does not get highlighted in corporate. But is it only part of a diversity law and rest are all guidelines? What would you like to share about this? So if anybody wants to throw some light on this aspect of, equal pay, equal work, equal pay, irrespective of gender, whether it is just a guideline in India or if this is something like a mandate. Anybody from the panel would like to raise their hand and take this question, please?
Yeah. I can just start. Okay.
Please.
So before we even get to the point of an equal pay and equal parity, let's also understand what is the job content which the person is doing. I think that is where the basic thing starts. what's the job, and defining the job for the organization, leveling the organization in terms of how we have an organization set up. Are we having enough of job roles? Are we having the enough of or maybe the career opportunities for people to grow? So these are some basic ground checks which is needed for an organization. Are you really investing in the growth, learning and growth of your people? If you have your technical career path, do you have a leadership career path? So do you are investing enough? You're working towards building things for your organization, because that's the base. I mean, that's how it starts. I mean, and that is when things get linked to the compensation, which is a later piece, that when the leveling happens, then where is the pay parity or where the compensation piece will come. But for any organization to start this is where is your job. How are you giving importance to the job? What is the impactful job which people are doing? And then you're basing or you're kind of rewarding them or recognizing them for the job which they're doing. And I think this requires a lot of work, a lot of investment again for the organizations too, because you need to understand that if you are telling that, yes, there is an equal opportunity for everybody, I have an equal level playing, then where is it coming from? Where is the data behind? Is it really reflecting in your job descriptions? Is it really reflecting in the people understanding this? Yes, they can see a career path for themselves. Are they open to apply for jobs inside? So all these things have to be set up as your basic thing first, and then you could put a guardrail or maybe next approach the next level, that what could be a pay parity or something like that. But I think this is how maybe organizations have to start, and then maybe slowly they can mature. But it has to start from how do we understand the job purpose and then gradually go beyond.
Superb. I'm gonna, take this a little, ahead, and really again, kind of, ask this of the panelists, because we already understand and know that in certain countries, especially in the Nordics, etc., we know that, equal parity, equal pay and equal parity is almost like something which is legalized, and by law you need to publish it in your reports, which, kind of gives that understanding in terms of pay parity and pay transparency. And I think the question was more coming in from that perspective of, do you probably see this happening in India now, ever, whatever it could be? And I mean, again, it's open for interpretation for a lot of us, but I'm also kind of curious to know, because in many of the Western countries, at least we can see they're moving towards that direction or that path. But I think in India, if ever that might be a possibility, is a question I think I'm sitting on.
Sure, I can give it a try.
Yes.
I feel that, first question, and responding to the first part of this question is that...
Sorry, I'm not sure who's speaking here. Okay, Harini, yes, now I can see you on the screen. Yes.
Sorry. So I'm just trying to answer the first part of the question that the audience had. Of course, in India, it's still not a law. And it's not instituted in our constitution. It's not a fundamental right and things like that. But we must know and we must understand that, historically we come from a space like, Amith started off with the history, saying that we do not come from a space where equality and all of that came in, the rights of people, women and things like that. So it is a journey for us. Sure. And diversity and inclusion is a journey, and pay parity is definitely the most important. Of course, now we've started seeing that bridging the gap with Bollywood actors, because many
yes. Good that you brought that up. Yes. And also I think the female football team, the Indian cricket team, all of those, people have really started speaking up and really, raising the bar higher on that one. But statistically, going back, for every $1 that a man earns, a woman earns 88 cents. That's what the data still shows at a global level.
Yes, that's right. So in India, I think it's still a progressive journey. It's an aspirational journey. But some of the organizations today, I can really see that they are doing a lot of audits around their performance cycle, keeping a tab on the promotion rates, criteria, and also doing this salary pay parity as a regular exercise, a regular yearly exercise, right? And with that, it's just giving a lot of visibility to, where the disparity is, and, creating solutions, doing the market corrections, and ensuring that while they're hiring new people from outside, they hire on the flat slab, and it's got nothing to do with gender. I think there is definitely some positive strides that we are taking in that direction. It's going to be a long journey.
It is a long, arduous journey, if I may add. a long, arduous journey, which is where we are. And I see Amit and Bhumika is just waiting to jump into the conversation. Please, both of you, can we also have them in the spotlight? And Amit, you can go in first, and Bhumika next, please.
Right. So I think, what is also important for us to understand is that pay parity or pay equity is also a function of, how well are your employees growing in the organization? And when I say employees, I'll be very, keep it very simple, men versus women versus all the other genders. So I'll just share a quick and a very personal experience because this is what we did in my previous organization. I was working for a large tech company which had more than 200,000 employees. So what we used to do is every year, when it used to be the time for promotions, all right, or appraisals for that matter, we used to draw up a list called as the why not list. Now, this why not list looks at women, all right, who have been top rated in the organization, but who have not been promoted or not moved up the career ladder.
Mm-hmm.
Looked at women in the organization who were, you know, in the top quartile in terms of their performance appraisal ratings for 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6+ years as well. And unfortunately, some of these women, though they were, top performing, they had never got an equal opportunity to grow as compared to the male counterparts. And this was because of various reasons. It could be because of, let's say, uh, a maternity break. It could be because of, let's say, caregiving reasons. It could be because of a personal reason that I had to take a break from my career and then rejoin the workforce. All right. So we should draw up this why not list, send it to the leadership and the comp and ben team, saying that here are a list of women that should be considered because they have been top rated, yet they have not been promoted. All right. This gave us some very, very good results. In fact, a lot of women said that, yes, I could not speak up in my organization because of a fear of what would happen if I said that I want to be promoted. Personally speaking, there is no harm in saying that I want to move up the corporate ladder if you have proved yourself. That itself
But
is
again, women struggle with imposter syndrome. So, yes.
meant to, all right? Let me be very open, and everybody else as well.
Right.
Just a very personal example, which I wanted to share, that pay equity takes a lot of efforts, all right? And it takes a lot of, inclusive efforts even within the organization for you to achieve that parity.
Superb. Yes, Bhumika, please add on to what Amit just shared.
Yeah, Amit and Harini explained it beautifully, but I think it's every organization's journey, and every organization is at different stage. Let's take a very simple example. When an organization hire from campus, they offer same salary to everyone, irrespective of the gender. But is it true once the employee grow up the ladder, move up the ladder? It may not be. So taking it back to the point of unconscious bias, and this is where the talent management aspects of how we are looking at evaluating employees, hiring, promoting, growing them, the entire practice comes in picture, and how at each stage we are being conscious of these biases and eliminating it from the process becomes important. There are some organizations who are doing it beautifully. They are on this journey. They are way ahead. There are some organizations still needs to work upon it. But I think even if you look at industry research, they typically, right, Deloitte or Bain research says, as recent as 2023 says that 39% of any population in any organization experiences biases pretty much on an everyday basis. And 68% responded saying that their work gets negatively impacted because of the unconscious bias. So if you look at data point, as Priyanka mentioned, we look at there's enough for us to look at the data point and take a stop and pause ourselves and see how our processes are push forwarding some of these important topics of become equality and belongingness.
Absolutely. And to that, to your point, Bhumika, my next question is actually waiting for you on that one. So, I mean, I know we are on the top of the hour, so we'll try and keep the answers short, and I'll do one quick round with all my panelists. But this is the last question, which is coming to you, Bhumika. Like we have been discussing and we've been hearing from all our panelists, and we all, I think, acknowledge and understand that the success of any DEIE initiative depends heavily on leadership commitment, whether we like to believe it or not, but it does. So what are some of the key traits of being a truly inclusive leader, and how can leaders hold themselves accountable to drive change, real change?
That's a great question, Maya. And I think we all probably in our role of HR, being a advisor to our senior leaders, learn and evolve over a period of time as to see, what are these skills and what are these behaviors and traits that we need to be conscious of. Since we are on the topic of unconscious bias, I would say that's the first one, right? Like being aware of what are day-to-day biases that can creep in any people decision that we see, starting from hiring, as Amit mentioned, right? Like, and industry is moving on to skill-based hiring. So things are becoming more and more black and white as opposed to gray. So in terms of having the biases of whether it is affinity bias that Anjan had spoken about, or it is pedigree bias, right? Most of us would see in our roles in talent acquisition and otherwise also there is something called as geographic region bias or a pedigree bias that creeps in.
Affinity bias, yes, like
Yes. So a lot of that happens, whether it is at a hiring stage, how a manager, how a leader can be conscious of that, and not only for himself, herself, for themselves or for their own team members as well. So how are they fast forwarding the talent acquisition process, which is completely dependent on skill and opportunity and not on any other biases. That's just the starting point. The other, and be aware of the impact, right? Be it whether I am at a gatekeeper stage of hiring process and limiting diversity by taking some actions or decisions which are in favor of the biases. So that creates a limited diversity opportunity. Second is it impacts employee morale quite a bit. So to look at productivity at the workplace and morale at the workplace, it's not just once in a year engagement survey, but it's like a day-to-day morale of the workers at the workplace. So that decision point as a leadership member need to be aware of that, need to be conscious of that. Also need to be conscious of some of the decision that I'm taking, because as a leader, if my decision is going to have a grassroots level impact. So having the data point, making sure that the decision is in the favor of belongingness and equality at the end of the day, either when I'm hiring or when I'm promoting or even when I'm creating a succession slate, or lastly, the way I'm giving increments to my team member. So all are these very critical steps. And for being aware and for being able to take that courageous decision is going to be very important.
Absolutely. I think, I think all of us unanimously, I can probably speak for my panelists, that all of us unanimously agree to the fact that awareness is what drives us into action. So, the first A in the process is awareness. The second step, or the second A, would probably be acceptance. And the third A is towards action. Awareness, acceptance, and moving towards action. So with that, I think we kind of come to almost a closure. But before we say goodbye, I would just kind of come across to all my panelists and really ask if you could share one action item that you think every leader or an employee should take starting today to be able to reduce unconscious bias. What would that be? And let's keep this very quick and short and brief, because we are on the top of the hour, and I know it's a Saturday evening. Do not want to hold up people on their evening plans. So yeah, let's just do a quick round, and maybe if I'm going by the same order, Amit can start first and then Anjan, and we can do the round with everybody. Yes, please.
So I would say commitment. All right.
Okay.
You need to stay committed in terms of what you want to see as an outcome from diversity and inclusion. Business cycles will come and go. There will be ups and downs. It's very, very important to stay committed in terms of what do you want to achieve and your vision and roadmap for diversity and inclusion, including
Thank you.
biases in the workplace.
Thank you. So commitment. All right. Anjan?
Well, Maya, if you ask me, I would say start by challenging assumptions. For
Lovely.
instance, and if a leader consistently assigns client-facing roles, say to extroverts, they should pause and reflect.
Sure, that's a
Am
lovely.
I am I really overlooking quieter employees who might excel in these roles? And also, how do you create opportunities for feedback? That's very, very important, because ask your team members how they perceive biases, because it can also help identify some blind spots. If you all know the Johari window, and also
Awesome.
drive equitable decisions across the organization. So that would be my 2 cents.
Awesome. From commitment to challenging biases and challenging the norms. Harini, what's your take?
I don't know what else to say because everything is covered. But perhaps I was just thinking that why don't we sit on the opposite side of the table and look up from that standpoint, that what would this person feel or experience if I were to ask these questions to me? Perhaps that perspective can help.
Lovely, lovely. I love this whole mirroring and sitting on the other side of the table aspect. Thank you so much for adding that. Yes, Priyanka.
Yes, so maybe I can share from my own personal experience is I most of the time do this pause and reflect. And this is something which I do try to do it on an everyday basis to practice myself, that let me just pause and reflect of my own self, whether my decision or whether my own assumptions, is it really going to help me? Is it really going to help somebody? Is it going to help the larger purpose? So that's when I try making notes of things. And this is something which is not really, I would say it's a leadership thing or an individual contributor thing. This is something which all of us can try, because that's when you pause and when you reflect, that's when you are understanding the deeper meaning of things, how it can lead to impacts, how your certain actions can be harmful or your certain actions can help others. Moreover, if we make a commitment to practice it daily, and that is when you are accepting or maybe making a commitment to yourself to move from your fixed mindset to the growth mindset, accepting that change for your own better self. And that is when you do it this in the workplace, that's when we have an equitable workplace and it was where everybody feels safe.
Awesome. So pause and reflect. Awesome. Bhumika.
I would say continuous learning. That's very important. So, for anybody, encouraging ongoing discussions, that's the start, and the learning opportunity to keep the biases mitigation at the forefront.
Super. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, panelists. This was really an amazing conversation. And as you probably have seen or not, I don't know if you've followed the chat, but I've been seeing that the chat box has been buzzing with comments saying that we really loved it. This was a great, discussion. So thank you so much for spending your Saturday afternoon/evening with us here. And thanks to Karen and the entire team at Idobro and Rise World for making this possible for us. And before we, say adios, I would like to just share, one sentence about diversity equity, because that's the topic that we've been talking on. So diversity is not about how we are different, but diversity is all about embracing our each other's uniqueness. And I think this is the parting thought that I would like to leave with all of you, and really think of how can we as human beings, individuals, professionals, and leaders be inclusive in all matters of life, whether at the workplace or in life in general. Thank you so much for being such a lovely audience, and I wish you have a great rest of the evening and a great, wonderful weekend and the lovely start to a new month. All right. Over to you, Karen.
Great. Thank you so much, Maya, and all the experts over here. We don't call them speakers. I don't know if you all realize this or not. We always say experts, and the reason is anyone can speak, right? But to share real insightful, kind of an experience, I think that comes from experts. And so I think that's the way we describe them. And so thank you very much, Maya, for bringing them to us year after year and having this amazing conversations, right? So before we close, I just want to give a quick reminder that we do have the closing plenary. We still have the Bangalore physical event happening continuously, and a couple of others that are on. But at 5:30, we have the closing plenary and the Rise Awards, where 3 incredible people are going to be receiving. One is a Lifetime Achievement Award, and 2 of them are Global Citizen Award, because they are, of course, not from India. But do join us. I'm not going to share the name because I do want you to be there. So do join us, and we really look forward to having you. And of course, the portal will be open for another 7 days, for another week. So you do have another week to go through all the videos on demand, which will be open only to those in the portal. I might add that to you. So that's something that you can continue to do. There's a lot of resources that our partners have shared, the booths, the pavilions. So go ahead, make the most of the portal as long as it's open right now. And of course, we look forward to seeing you again next year, if at all we don't meet again at the panel. With that, we come to a close, and thank you once again for your time and your attention. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Adios. Bye-bye. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.